Story 1, Church in the Woods. This story was shared by Reddit user OutWorldler39 on the subreddit LetsNotMeet. It happened in rural Ohio back in the 1970s. It was the summer after my friend Joe and I saw the movie Stand By Me. That film did something to us. We were just two kids who lived for the woods behind his family's farm. We spent almost every day out there building forts, setting traps, and pretending we were frontiersmen. But after watching that movie, we decided we needed a real adventure of our own. We started walking the old railroad tracks that cut through the countryside. We told ourselves we were looking for cool bridges to fish from and places to camp overnight. In truth, we just wanted to feel like we were on some kind of quest, far away from everything we knew. One evening, the light was fading fast as we followed the tracks deeper into the woods than we had ever gone before. The air smelled thick with pine needles and damp earth. Cicadas were screaming in the trees, and our sneakers crunched loudly on dry leaves and twigs. We had been walking for a long time when Joe suddenly stopped and pointed through a gap in the trees. Down at the bottom of a small hill, half hidden by the woods, we saw a building. From where we stood, it looked like an old sugar shack or maybe a forgotten barn. We climbed the hill to get a better look, our breathing getting heavier with every step. When we reached the top, both of us froze. It wasn't a shack at all. It was an old church. The building was low and sagging, made of dark wooden planks almost completely covered in black moss and rot. A weathered cross still sat crooked on the roof. The windows were completely empty, just dark gaping holes with no glass. There were no doors either, only open doorways that looked like black mouths, waiting to swallow anyone who got too close. It had clearly been abandoned for decades. We stood there for a long moment without speaking. The woods around us had gone strangely silent. No birds, no insects, just the sound of our own hearts pounding and the wind moving through the leaves. Joe finally whispered, "We should check it out." I didn't want to. A cold feeling had settled in my stomach, telling me we should turn around and go home right now. But I didn't want to seem scared in front of my best friend. So we started down the hill, moving as quietly as we could, trying not to step on anything that would make noise. As we got closer, we could see inside through the open doorway. Rows of old wooden pews, a raised platform at the front. Everything was covered in thick dust and hanging cobwebs. It looked like no one had set foot inside for years. We stopped about 20 yards away. That's when the sound began. At first it was faint, almost like a low hum or distant voices carried on the wind. Then it grew louder, a long, sustained wail that didn't sound quite human. It rose and fell, getting more intense with every passing second. It was the most disturbing sound I had ever heard in my life. I felt it vibrating in my chest. I covered my ears, but it didn't help at all. Joe grabbed my arm so tightly it hurt. Then he hissed, his voice shaking, "They're coming out." A line of figures stepped through the open doorway. They moved in a single file, holding hands, all wearing dark clothing. We couldn't make out their faces clearly in the dying light, but the way they moved was wrong. Slow, deliberate, almost like they weren't quite walking like normal people. The waiting grew louder. It felt like it was coming from everywhere at once, filling the entire woods. We didn't wait another second. We turned and ran back up the hill as fast as our legs could carry us. Branches whipped across our faces. Our feet slipped on loose dirt and rocks. I could hear my own heartbeat thundering in my ears and the sound of Joe breathing hard right beside me. I kept expecting to feel a hand grab the back of my shirt at any moment. We didn't stop running until we were far away from that hill and back on the main road. Later, as we walked along the road heading home, a man stepped out from the tree line. He just stood there in the middle of the road, completely still, watching us. Our eyes met for a brief second. There was something cold and knowing in that stare. We walked faster, never looking back. To this day, I still wonder what we actually saw inside that church in the woods, and who that man really was. To the people we saw that night, let's not meet again. Story 2, Terrorized for 2 hours. This story was posted by Reddit user Mara Grace on the subreddit Let's Not Meet. It happened while she was in college in Isla Vista, California. It was late when I finally made it home. Isla Vista was a notorious party town, and my roommates often had friends crashing on our couches after nights out. I was exhausted, and I just wanted to slip inside quietly without waking anyone. I unlocked the door and stepped into the dark apartment. In the living room, I could see the outline of someone lying on the couch. I assumed it was just another friend who had stayed over. I walked past without turning on any lights, heading straight for my bedroom. But something felt off. The figure on the couch was lying too still, unnaturally stiff, like every muscle in their body was locked tight. I slowed down and glanced over. That's when the head suddenly jerked toward me. It moved so fast it made me flinch. Wide eyes stared straight at me from the darkness. The rest of the body didn't move at all, just the head turning to watch me walk by. My stomach dropped. I kept walking, trying to act like everything was normal, and went straight into my bedroom. I closed the door as quietly as possible and locked it behind me. I stood there in the pitch black for a moment, listening. My heart was beating so hard I could hear it in my ears. Then the sound started. At first it was soft, like someone lightly drumming their fingers against the wood of my door. I held my breath and listened. The tapping continued for what it felt like forever. Then it changed. It became scratching. Slow, deliberate scratches across the surface of the door. I backed away and sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the door in the dark. The scratching grew louder, more urgent. It sounded like both hands were now clawing at the wood. I could hear the desperation in every movement. My door was old and thin. I kept waiting for it to splinter under the pressure. After what felt like an eternity, the scratching finally stopped. A few minutes later, I heard heavy banging coming from down the hall. My roommate's doors. Loud, violent blows that shook the walls. Then I heard them screaming. I grabbed my phone with shaking hands and dialed 911. I whispered as quietly as I could, telling the operator that someone had broken into our apartment and was trying to break down the doors. She said an officer was on the way. While I was still on the phone, the banging continued. It sounded like he was throwing his entire body against the doors. When the police finally arrived, everything went silent. They discovered that the side door had been forced open earlier in the night. The man had been inside the apartment the entire time. On my bedroom door, they found deep, violent gouges, made with a pair of scissors he had used to scratch and stab at the wood over and over again. He had dropped the scissors on the ground before running off into the night. The police never caught him. What still terrifies me the most is that I walked right past him in the dark, and he let me go into my room. He waited. He planned everything. For 2 full hours, he terrorized us from inside our own home. To the man who hid in our apartment that night, let's not meet again. Story 3. I survived a mass shooting at a movie theater. This final story was posted by Reddit user Neon Pikachu on the subreddit Let's Not Meet. It is a first-hand account of surviving the 2012 Aurora, Colorado movie theater shooting. It was supposed to be a fun night out. My husband and I had gone to see the midnight showing of the new Batman movie. The theater was packed with excited people laughing and talking. We found our seats, got comfortable, and settled in as the lights dimmed and the preview started. At first, the loud pop almost sounded like it could have been part of the movie. Then another one came right after, and another. People started looking around, confused. Some were even laughing nervously, thinking it was a prank or special effect. Then the screaming began. Tear gas suddenly filled the air. It burned my eyes and throat so badly I could barely breathe. I couldn't see clearly through the thick smoke. Gunshots continued, rapid, terrifying, and far too close. I dropped to the floor between the seats, pulling my husband down with me as fast as I could. My heart was pounding so hard it hurt. Around us, the theater descended into complete chaos. People were panicking, trying to run toward the exits. Others were hurt and crying out for help. I remember the sounds most clearly, the gunfire echoing off the walls, the screams, the confusion. Time seemed to slow down and speed up at the same time. My husband had been hit. I could feel warm blood on my hands as I tried to help him stay low. Nearby, a little girl in our row had also been shot. She didn't survive. We stayed as low as possible, crawling when we could, trying desperately to find a way out. The gunfire seemed to go on forever. Every second felt like it could be our last. Eventually, we made it out of the theater and into the night air. The parking lot had turned into a war zone, filled with police cars, flashing lights, and terrified people running in every direction. In the days and weeks that followed, the nightmares came almost every single night. The sound of sudden loud noises still makes me freeze in place. I survived that night, but a part of me changed forever. To the man who opened fire in that theater, let's not meet again. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed my horror story narrations, please make sure you leave a like, comment, and subscribe. Until we meet again, keep your locker sealed, my friends.